You know, we have to know what we stand for and be willing to stand for it. Not in meanness and in an accusatory way, but in loving kindness. You know, I've been speaking from this book called Anyway, the Paradoxical Commandments by Kent Keith. And, you know, these commandments, or these instructions really, are about putting or being aware and putting meaning in our lives. And they're paradoxical because to read them right on the surface, it seems like they contradict exactly what you would do. It's like, oh no, that doesn't make any sense. But the purpose of this is not to make sense, is to have deep personal meaning. And that's different maybe than making sense. So I'm going to do a brief review because I know, I'm just going to do a brief review. Here they are, because we're at number 7 out of 10 starting today. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. Remember that? Love them anyway, because what? Because love matters. That's what matters. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Be successful anyway. Because being who you are created to be matters. Being who you are created to be matters. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. And the good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Because goodness matters. Goodness matters. That's what creates meaning in life. Being good because goodness matters. Doing good. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyway. Because you know what? Dreams matter. Dreams matter. They matter. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. Because connection matters. Connection matters. Being honest and frank is about being connected, not taking a back seat, not making yourself small. Because connection matters. Being honest and frank to yourself and with others. And today I start off with instruction number 7, which is, people favor underdogs but follow top dogs. I'm not talking about your sports teams, by the way. Just erase that from your mind. People favor underdogs but follow top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. Here's what Kent says about this. We sympathize with underdogs. We identify with them. And I always thought, when I was doing this lesson, I was thinking of underdog. Remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember underdog. Others, look it up online. It's still there. That's where I verified it. We sympathize with underdogs. We identify with them. We love stories in which the underdogs win against all odds. We enjoy cheering for them. But when it is our own family, our own career, or our own reputation that is at stake, we usually don't take the risk. Yikes. Zing. We usually don't take the risk. I'm talking about in real situations with real people in your life right now. We don't take the risks. Because yes, there is a risk. There's a risk to siding with an underdog, like real people, not your sports teams, again, real people. The risk is you get kicked out of the group. You get made fun of. You get put down. Maybe you lose your job. Or maybe it's even worse than that. The biggest example I thought of when I was preparing this lesson about that had to do with the civil rights movement. You know, for all the black and brown people that were the underdogs, there were a few white people too that marched in the South shoulder to shoulder with those people against slavery, against the owning of people. Side by side, but not everybody did, because it was a big risk. It was a big risk for those white people. It was dangerous. It was just as dangerous or more dangerous for the black folks. I'm not saying it wasn't for the underdogs themselves, but for those white people, it was a big risk. And so that's why we usually align ourselves with the top dogs. We usually don't want to take that risk. Put our own, well, somebody else will take care of that. You know, let's just let someone else step up for that. We don't want to make ourselves too noticeable, take a risk. Let's just make ourselves a little bit small. Let's take the back seat to that. Let's play it safe. Let's play it safe, and we really want a life of ease, right? Life of ease sounds good, doesn't it? But listen, you know as well as I do, life isn't always about easy. It's just not. Life of ease is not what it's all about. Being easy and having a deep and meaningful life always don't go together. They always don't go together. And what we really want to do, though, is do things like jump on the bandwagon with things. We're going to jump on the bandwagon because that's where all the fun's being had. That's where the people are going off to party. That's where the noisemakers are going round and round and people are happy. And those 2 or 3 people that stay standing on the ground, we don't want to be next to them. That's exactly where it should be if we believe in the cause, if we believe in what that stands for. That's where we should be. We should be on the ground instead of on the bandwagon. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. To fight for the underdog, to be with the underdog when it's the right choice because it's what we believe in as well. And it's not easy. It's easier to jump on the bandwagon. What I'm really talking about here is personal integrity. And here's what happens is what you believe in has to be more important than what other people think. What you believe in has to be more important than something you would lose. Like what you believe in has to be paramount. That has to be what it's about. It has to be important enough to stand with the underdog regardless of what happens. Because what can happen can be uncomfortable. It can be maybe even devastating. It happens. I saw on Facebook there was a photo this week. It was the first week of school, right? There was a photo on Facebook, maybe some of you saw it, of this probably first grader, maybe even kindergarten, this little African-American boy, standing next to this little blonde-headed, crying Caucasian boy. Have you seen it? Anybody see it? Who happens to be autistic. And that little African-American boy is reached over in this picture holding that little boy's hand. Now listen, he didn't know that was a risk because he wasn't taught to hate or he wasn't taught to protect himself. He didn't know it was a risk, but from our perspective of what we might have done, that was a risk. But here's the teaching out of the mouths of babes, is that was absolutely the right and only thing to do. Is to say to this little boy standing next to him, it's going to be all right, by simply holding his hand. Yeah, from the little ones. Because it really is a risk sometimes as adults. Here's some examples of adult kind of things like, whistleblowers. You've heard of whistleblowers. We give them that kind of derogatory sounding name. They should really be called truth sayers, in my opinion. We should give them, you are the truth sayer, you are that one. But whistleblowers, man, they can put a lot at risk. And you notice there aren't like gangs of whistleblowers, there's usually like one. Because the rest of us are too scared. We want to take the easy way out. We want to live our life at ease. We want to make ourselves small enough to not be noticed. Even though we walk by their desk and go, yeah, way to go. Yes, whistleblowers. What about standing up to bullies? What about that immigrant that's being hassled that we just try to get on by because we don't want to get involved? Because even though we know in our hearts the right thing to do is stand up to someone, we're afraid. Because bad things can happen. There's stories about actually people getting killed on subways for standing up to someone who is making fun and riding on an immigrant. What about defending someone who we know has been unjustly accused? We think, well, it's not worth it. That's a waste of my time. Really? Really? I don't know about that. I think there are many people who stand up. It's just maybe not us, or maybe it is you. And maybe you are the one. But it's not a whole gaggle of folks doing that. It's just a few. Here's the thing. If we are willing to do that, we will have deep meaning in our life. That's a given. That's a given right out of the gate. We have to know what we stand for and be willing to stand for it. Not in meanness and in an accusatory way, but in loving kindness. To stand there because we know it's right. We need to have that wider view of life. Many of these spiritual principles, we encourage us to have a wider view of life. This is the view that says, in 5 years, what will this mean to me? What would I like to tell the story about this event to my kids or my grandkids? How would I like that to be? the kind of view that allows us to take the risk to support an underdog, to support someone, even though it would be easier to run with the top dogs. Not every underdog is right. Not every underdog's issues are important, but some are. From time to time, you will discover an underdog who needs the kind of help that you can give. Because of who you are and what you believe, you should give that help. When you look back at the end of your life, you may conclude that fighting for a few underdogs was one of the most meaningful things you ever did. People favor underdogs, but only follow top dogs. Most people. Is that most people, you and me? Or are we willing to stand with a few underdogs? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And what that does to me to have meaning in my life. Well, instruction number 8 is this. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. Are y'all catching on by now, right? Build anyway. While some things have lasted for centuries, most of what we do will not last very long beyond our own lifetimes. Let that sink in for a minute. Most of what we do will not last far beyond our own lifetimes. That's a pretty humbling thought, isn't it? And even if it does last, even if you did something, if you wrote a song or wrote a book or took a picture or had a baby or you know, it's going to change. It's going to change. Life changes. It's not the same. Build a company. You know, whatever you're doing now, chances are in 1 or 2 generations, it's going to fade from view. It's a humbling thing, but here's the thing. Does that mean we should just chill out and not do anything? No. It's exactly the opposite, because what we're encouraged to do is find meaning in the creation, in the building of a life itself. That's what we're encouraged to do. There's great satisfaction in the building of it. It doesn't matter if anybody notices, if we'll get the credit, if it's the biggest, the best, and the brightest. The fact is that the deep and immense personal meaning in life comes from the actual building. So I say create it, build it, paint it, gather it, open it, do whatever it is. That's where you find deep personal meaning in that. It doesn't matter if anybody ever notices, or if it lasts, or if it's gone tomorrow. The meaning you get is what is important. You know, I read this story online about the people in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is a nation that has been deforested by farming practices and other things. And in June, the people in Ethiopia in 12 hours planted 250 million trees. 250 million trees in this effort they're making to reforest their country. And I can guarantee you that most of the people who planted those trees will not be around to see if it made a difference or not. They won't be around to see if they get burned again, if the government takes them down or somebody else burns them up. But they did it. And if you look at the pictures of those people planting trees, they're like ecstatic. So here's kind of the corollary to this is, you know, you may make a huge effort and nobody may notice, or you may not be around to see if it makes a difference, but do it anyway. Because it matters. It matters to those people in Ethiopia. They're planning on reforesting their nation. And they're not stopping. And yes, maybe their children will be able to see it, but many won't. Many won't. It reminded me of another thing. Renee and I had the experience. I guess it was early this spring, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong. It was early this spring, and we were over by Slice of Life, over at Fulton Station near the Walgreens. You know, at the corner of Healthy and Happy, over there. A little brevity. And we were going, I think we were going into the Slice of Life to have a slice of pizza in this alley. And Renee said, oh my gosh, look at that. And right in this curved area, right between the Walgreens and the Slice of Life, there was a century plant that was blooming. I mean, a century plant. You know why they call it a century plant. It blooms once a century, once in 100 years, and we saw it. We were taking pictures. I'm getting goosebumps. We were taking pictures. We were going all around it. how it ever survived, I don't know. We saw a century plant blooming. And I thought, somebody planted that. Somebody planted that thing there, and they didn't have a chance of seeing it. Well, there's a few people who might have, but very few would have had a chance if they planted a century plant to see it. And we saw that. And I feel so grateful for that. We have all kinds of pictures of it. It was a beautiful blue sky behind it. Those things are like 20 feet tall, all right? They come up out of this plant, and they go like beyond this, up to the ceiling. And we're taking these pictures. It was yellowish, wasn't it? The yellow flower, I think, against this blue sky. It was amazing. Planted anyway. You know, I have to say, unfortunately, the development of the Pine Valley Library is gone. So that particular plant will not be blooming again. But we saw that because someone decided to plant it, regardless if they were going to be the one to take advantage of the bloom. You see what I'm saying here? So these are the two commandments this week. What you spend years building, or what you spend much effort accomplishing, could be destroyed overnight, or could never be realized by you, the result. But build it anyway. Because joy in this very moment matters. Joy in this moment is what matters. People favor underdogs, but follow top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. Because you know what matters? Integrity matters. Integrity matters. And if it doesn't, I should check myself because it should. So let's take a deep breath and take those ideas into meditation this afternoon. And be grateful. I'm so grateful for that person who planted that century plant. I'm so grateful that people in Ethiopia realize it's not the immediate gratification stuff that matters. It's the planting, it's the creating, it's the gathering that matters. And it matters in your life the same. So take a deep breath in and let it out. And rest assured that what you do matters. What you stand for and your willingness to stand for it is incredibly important. That you, expressing to the highest level the divine of your being, is essential. Essential. Guide me, O God, so I may always live in the purity and goodness that I carry in my heart. Guide me so I may grow in kindness, in understanding, and compassion. Guide me so I may always remember that we are made of the same cloth, part of the same tapestry of life. O light, help me remember always that we